Okay, hello guys. This is Chronicles. I am Dilara Minovan. I'm here with Professor Whoolery. And here we also have Boyan Milenkov, who's here to make sure nothing goes wrong on the technical side. And today we'll be discussing the topic of culture and time. Hello, Professor. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening to you.
Should we start right in?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we're starting straight with a philosophical question. How do you define time?
Time is tricky because it depends on who's defining it, what culture you're coming from, what perspective you're taking. But I'd say it's somewhat like a way of marking change.
Very philosophical.
Yeah.
View. I mean, it was a philosophical question. So how do you personally perceive time?
I'd say that my view of time went from me feeling like I knew what time was.
Yeah, like it's that physical.
Yeah,
notion,
like we all kind of know. It's minutes, seconds, hours. It's this thing we're measuring. And then I basically came to the point that I don't really know anything about it at all and started doing research in that area in anthropology, lived with this tribe, did research on their view of time, and I realized I don't understand time. I just understand my cultural view of time. But that's not time. That's just a way of seeing time.
The academic experience, the more you know, the less you know.
That's exactly right.
You never.
Yep.
We're all dumb. Next question. So you said you lived with this tribe and studied their perception of time. How did their perception differ? What is the thing that made you realize time is not kind of physical constant? What made you take this cultural lens on time?
You know, they don't have any of the abstract stuff that we've added on. I mean, it's all made up, right? Minutes, seconds, hours, calendars, like days of the week, of course, are just made up. Months are just made up. Years as a number, it's just all made up. So they didn't have any of the made up stuff, right? Theirs was very concrete. So it had to do with the rising and setting of the sun, the phases of the moon, seasonal changes. So they viewed time very much as like a cycle rather than Western views of time are more like it's on a line. So for the Himba, time exists in this set of cycles. You have the rising and setting of the sun cycle, you have the moon phases cycle, you have the seasonal cycle, but there's no moving forward of time. Every day is a repetition of the same thing, day.
I feel like that really impact the way they view like history at the very least.
Absolutely, yeah.
Kind of trying to imagine how you define history and culture without that much of a concrete view on like the passage of time, like moving forward.
Right. Yeah, it really makes a really big difference in so many aspects of how you understand the world, how you understand people, how you understand a human life, all of those things. Yeah, really different.
So in which ways did these differences manifest outside of the concrete understanding of time? Like there is like this obvious differences in which we measure time, but how did the measurement of time affect the other parts of the culture?
How people live, yeah. I'd say one of the most important is that you don't have a sense of being in a hurry. And you don't have there's no concept of being late. So they just don't have that in their language. So we can be late because we all agree that there's such a thing as a clock and that clock is real and that we all, now we all have digital clocks that are all connected to the internet. So they're all basically the same, right?
The same clock.
But that's just, we all agreed on it, but it doesn't make it real. We just made it up, right? So they don't have that. And so, yeah, things like hurrying, rushing, feeling... You know that feeling people say, oh, I wish there were more hours in the day. They just don't have that feeling. So you could say that for Westerners and linear time, time is scarce. It's like a commodity that we never quite have enough of. And when a day is over, that day isn't repeated. For the Himba, every day is a repetition of day. Every moon cycle is a repetition of the moon cycle. So you could say they have a superabundance of time. We always have too little. They always have more.
We never have time for anything.
Right.
Yeah. Too many stuff to do, too little time to do it.
Yeah.
I should look across my question. There was a question which really covered that. yeah, there it is. In your experience, what would you assume are the cultures who have like the biggest differences in the perception of time, and like why?
Well, I mean, you have the obvious ones like tribal societies versus a big city in East Asia or in the United States or something. Like those are the more sort of obvious ones, right, that we're talking about here. But I mean, even cultures like India versus Korea, massive, massive difference in how they perceive of time, and it affects their daily lives a lot.
What would the differences there be? Because both of these countries have a use for like clocks and calendars, both the
Yeah.
measurements and days.
I'd say that their understanding of the nature of time changes the way they go about a given day. So, for example, Indians are much more present oriented. So, a lot of my I was for example, I was going back to India at one point, and I was going to stay with some friends, and it was like 6 months ahead, right? And that's normal in America. If I'm going to come stay with you, I'll tell you 6 months in advance. They were like, well, I'm trying to tell them the days. They're like, no, don't worry about it. Just tell us like 2 days before. Because for them, they're not really thinking about time in that way, that they're thinking of what happens in 6 months. They mostly just need a couple of days in advance because their lives are much more flexible. They're more focused on what's happening now rather than being governed by clocks and calendars and work weeks and all that kind of stuff.
Considering both America and India are massive like metropolises of
Yeah.
people, what do you think these differences are owed to?
Well,
What do
you definitely see urban and rural differences in time, even in Bulgaria, right? If you're in Sofia, it feels very different than if you're living out in a village.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so you find the same in India. If you're in a big city in India, it's definitely a bit more of a westernized clock time culture, though I'm hesitating to say that because in India it really kind of still isn't. While in the States it's the same. You basically everybody's on linear time, but definitely the countryside's going to be slower than a city. So that's one of the things that affects the tempo of a culture is how many people you have living near each other.
Yeah, so like it's tied to density in large part. Because in
for
America it takes a long time and planning to get from one point to the other. The country is massive.
Right.
Whereas in India, it's also like a massive country, but
It
it's
is
so much
huge.
more dense.
It is much more dense. But I think Indians just have a different sense of what time is like. I'll give you an example. So if you're American and you go to catch a plane or a train and it's 20 minutes late, it feels like a big deal, right? It's like 20 minutes delayed. In India, if you're going to catch a train especially, I don't know, it could be on time to the minute, or it could be up to maybe 5 hours late, and that's all normal. So when people go to catch a train, you bring food and you bring blankets to sit on, and they don't mind. They don't see it as waiting. They're so much better at waiting than like Americans are. Much more okay with things being as they are rather than like it should follow this schedule I have all planned out.
Yeah, fair. The thing I've noticed specifically between Bulgaria and America tied to this, America tends to be very structured. The main way I've noticed this was when I was applying for universities.
Yes.
And I was originally going to be in Sofia University because it had a law program. And I feel like it's also a matter of how used people are to administrative, excuse me for the administrative bullshit. It's very different flavors of administrative bullshit that kind of really affected the way I see time here and I see time in Sofia. Because in Sofia, I kind of expect to wait 3 weeks, not get an answer. The train is going to be late. The bus is going to be late. Actually, the buses in Sofia come on time very regularly. But like in other cities, I expect them to be like 20 to 30 minutes late.
Right.
I'm expecting nothing to get done on time. I'm expecting a process to take months, and I'm not already going with that expectation. Whereas I feel like even in the short time I've stayed in this university, I'm already starting to get kind of peeved if things happen like with a few days of delay, and I have to remind myself, hey, that's not... That's
exactly.
It almost feels like I'm being unreasonable.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting at something that I think our concept of time gives us a certain expectation of how things should work. And if your idea that things should work, I mean, let's take Japan as an even better example. If you go to Japan and the bus says it leaves at 6:30, and at 6:29 and 57 seconds, the doors will start to close, and it starts moving exactly at that moment. And so if you're used to that, then it's going to feel really strange to you, or something's going to feel wrong if it's 3 minutes, right? If you live in a place where it just doesn't work like that, you don't have the expectations, so it doesn't bother you in the same way.
It really doesn't. Tying into that, between all of the places you live on, all of the times you've seen, which one would you say resonated most with you?
I mean, I grew up in America, so that feels somewhat normal, I guess. But I guess I really liked living in places that were less linear and less time-focused. Because, you know, when I was first in India and teaching at the university, I often felt like I never knew what was happening and when it was going to happen. And then at one point I just realized nobody knew what was going to happen weeks ahead. It was like a matter of a couple of days, and that's all anybody knew. And then I was all, oh, this is great. Then I just relaxed. And then you kind of just let things happen when they happen. It's much more relaxing. I actually like waiting. So I enjoy it if I go to the doctor's office or the dentist's office or something, and I have to like sit there for an hour. I love that hour. I'll often bring a book, and it's like you can't say I'm not doing something because I went to the doctor's office. You can't expect me to be at work or like doing the dishes or something, right? And so I get to sit there for an hour and just like read a book. It's the best thing ever. So I've appreciated that I've been able to learn how to enjoy and be okay with a more flexible view of how time is. So
Yes,
I'm more like that now.
I suppose it, like in my personal experience, going from Sofia to like, maybe not directly Sofia, like to a province or like to a little town in Turkey, there is a sense of learning to be okay with not being constantly productive. That comes
That's
with
true.
a different
That's
perception
right.
of time. Yeah. It's really weird to be, when I'm sitting in like a clinic in Sofia waiting for the doctor for 2 hours because they couldn't figure out how to do prescriptions right, and I have to, I'm already like vibrating, like I have stuff to do. I have to go out. There's people
right.
waiting for me. There's
True.
people waiting behind
That's
me.
true.
I'm on a schedule. Whereas when I go to like relatives and I have to sit like for a few weeks, there's a bit of an adjustment period after which I come to the realization that I've become more okay with not doing something, or like not doing something productive, or not,
Right.
or like not having the perception of having 30 things lined up after this. Even if I do have something lined up after this, I'm like, they can wait.
Right. Well, you're getting at what in sort of the anthropology of time, they talk about clock time versus event time. In clock time, things happen according to the clock, including eating, sleeping, all that kind of stuff, right? Is that people say, oh, it's such and such a time, now it's time to eat. Or, oh, it's such and such time, now it's time to go to sleep. Or such and such a time is my appointment to meet with you and have a conversation. In event time cultures, it's a lot more things. Maybe one happens before the other thing, but time happens just as events sort of transpire in their natural way. So if you and I were going to meet at 7, anywhere between maybe 7 and 8 is pretty normal, because you may have been walking along and seen somebody, or there was some need that you needed to take care of, and you did that. If I show up at 7, that'd be weird anyway, but I'd probably expect to not see you immediately. And so I'm more relaxed. So in event time cultures, things happen as they happen, kind of naturally. After I have a conversation with this person, I'm going to go do this thing. But it isn't so fixed on the clock. So that's a really interesting difference.
Yeah, it's kind of like, do you define your events by time, or do the events define time?
Exactly.
I have noticed that the event time doesn't really work when you have a full-time job. But in little
It's
towns,
true.
or when I'm an university student, the time here does not matter. It doesn't register in my head. Is it 4 a.m.? Is it 12 p.m.? I have
Right.
no clue whatsoever.
You're right. Well, I think that's what happens for me, is that I know how to live in clock time. I've lived in it a lot. I don't prefer it. It's not my preferred form of time, but I can do it. I'm not late to things. can be at appointments on time when that's necessary. But then when I don't need that, I don't live on clock time.
You feel better not living on clock
I'd rather not. Yeah, I don't enjoy it. I don't. That's not my preference for sure. So unless something is important to the clock, I don't care about the clock. But it comes even, students of mine could tell you, but I have certain assignments that matter time-wise because they need to be done before something. Like I want it to be done before class because I want to have the students having read so that we can have a discussion about the material.
Oh,
but
yeah.
a lot of assignments, it doesn't really matter when it gets turned in for me. So let's imagine if I put a Friday night at midnight. I'm not going to, at least for me, I'm not going to be doing it at 12:01 a.m. I'll probably work it on Monday mornings. I don't really care if somebody turns it in until I start working on it. So I've even had students say sometimes, can I turn this in late? And I said, well, as long as it's there when I go to grade it, I won't even pay attention because it doesn't matter. Like, so I have this mix. There are some things that matter, that the time matters. Other things don't. And I just try not to get too worked up about that.
It's this sense of picking and choosing what are the best things for you personally from both worlds.
Right.
Kind of.
Exactly.
This actually brings us to a very interesting topic, which I have been kind of thinking about recently. Do you feel that with the rise of flexible working hours, remote work, and kind of globalization, do you feel like the perception of clock time itself has shifted?
I think there was an impact that COVID had on people's experience of time for sure. Because it was for many people one of the first moments in their lives where they didn't get up, go to work. This thing that we start doing at a pretty young age. Many people, including me, had been doing that for decades, and then suddenly you just wake up and you're like, well, okay. And I remembered when COVID hit, and I was thinking with my own kids. I had kids in kind of high school age. And I was all, do I need to tell them to go to bed on time? What's on time? There's nothing. Being on time is just this thing we made up. Maybe I'll just let them go to bed when they want to and get up when they want to because it doesn't matter. And so we just started going to bed when we wanted to and got up when we wanted to. And my family, most of us tend to be more like, I don't know, I'm more like 2 a.m. My kids are like 4. And then they just sleep. And what does it matter, right? Because before that in our normal lives, it matters a lot. You got to get up and you got to go to work. You got to go to school. Suddenly we're all going, do it whenever you do it. And I think for a lot of people that was really freeing. So I think then when like a big employer like Amazon says, no, now everybody has to come back to the office, everybody's really upset. And I think it's cool. We all got this little taste of a more flexible sense of time for our lives, and we liked it. I mean,
what it's like to not live on a schedule.
Exactly. Yeah. Wake up the interesting thing, let's say for the Himba, when I lived out there, is you wake up when you're not tired anymore. You eat when you're hungry. Eventually you get tired and you go to sleep. And you wake up when you're not tired anymore. I mean, it's not that strange to sort of think that way, but we live our lives so much according to the clock, to where it dictates when we wake up, when we eat, when we go to bed, all that stuff.
It takes a lot of work to get back those instincts of being hungry and going to eat.
Agreed. There's one thing of research where they found that people who had more problems with eating and being overweight actually tended to eat more according to a clock, which meant they were less in touch with their own bodies. They didn't eat when they were hungry. They ate because it was time to eat. So there's that disconnect, and sleep is the same thing. There's that disconnecting from the natural processes of the body, because the natural processes of the body are much closer to cyclical time than linear time, than clock time.
There is. I feel like this is something a lot of university students will relate to. For the first time in their lives, not being on an incredibly strict schedule. For many of the Bulgarian students, this would be actually a pretty big difference, because Bulgarian and a lot of European universities as well, that are not on the liberal arts system, they have like blocked off classes specifically. So I feel like Bulgarian specific university students will relate. This is the first time like you get any like flexibility in your schedule. So I feel like a lot will relate to like occasionally accidentally skipping meals, or like doing the unhealthy starving them bulking thing, or sleeping incredibly odd hours and being tired until they kind of adjust into it.
Exactly.
And find their own rhythm.
Yeah.
And then you have to go find a job.
Right. Well, that is a really rude awakening, right? Because it's true that being a student and being a professor, there are certain fixed times, but then there's quite a bit of my time that's just mine. I get it done when I get it done. So as long as I'm there for my classes and my office hours, nobody really cares when I'm there, right? I can get the work done when I want to. And if I want to take the afternoon to go do this thing, then I might work in the evening. But I like working in the evening. I'd rather work from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. than 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., right?
It's the type of freedom.
Yeah, and then you're right. You go get a job and they're like, we own you from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Your life is not yours and your time isn't yours. And I remember when I came up against that, I thought, oh, I don't want to live this life. So I'm a professor, right? I have kind of the same time signature as a student.
Yes, it does take time to become a professor, though. So there must have been a decent amount of years you have worked on the more conventional, like clock time thing.
Definitely. When I worked as a psychologist, I worked in a clinic and I had to be there in normal clock hours. But being a student and being a professor is but that mattered to me. I mean, I'd take less money. I mean, I guess I did. I have in my career. I'll take less money and have more time. More power, more flexibility and power over my own time. I will take over money.
At the end of the day, it's feeling better about yourself and having the time to do what you want to do. That's more important.
Right. To live the life you want to live.
To live the life you want to live. Both of my parents don't actually do conventional, like working hours either. Mm-hmm. My perception of time is nearly non-existent at this point.
Yeah, I imagine. You learn that a lot from watching your parents do it, right? That get up and go to work every day from 8 to 5 is something that we observe, and it becomes part of what we expect because it's what we see growing up. If you don't see that, that just... Why would you ever want to do that, right?
Non-existent perception of time.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to a few years of work having to adjust to a working schedule.
That's right. And you can. We're all flexible, but
I don't want to.
Time freedom is something very precious.
It is very precious. I do feel like this specific sense of like kind of freedom and adjustment towards time and like leads to people considering academia juvenile. In a sense, like unserious, not living in the real world, so to speak. I think this is like a part of it.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It's interesting that we put this, certainly in the States we have this 8 to 5 thing, or working extra hours, 60 hours a week is somehow manlier, more serious, more like you're a good person and more productive. Well, here's what I say to that. Okay, you go be more productive. That's fine with me. If that's what you want to do, that's cool. But
at this point in our world, we don't need that much more productivity. Yeah. It kind of starts getting more into personal ideology at this point. Yeah. But I do feel like this is one of the reasons people don't take academia as like not a serious, but like...
I know what you mean.
They feel like academics are these elites that live in like their own world. Mm-hmm. And I think the perception of time is a really big part of it, because who else is free at 1 p.m.?
Exactly. And I had times where I could either choose more hours and more money, or fewer hours and less money. And I've frequently chosen the fewer hours and less money, but to be with the people I want to be around and to be with my children and that kind of stuff. So I remember one summer I had a friend saying to me, oh, well, you're off from the university right now. I said, oh, yeah. He said, oh, what are you doing? And I said, nothing. He's like, well, I thought you'd like be doing some other project or something. And I was like, no, I'm not doing anything. And it bothered him so much. I noticed how many people were bothered by that idea. And so I said, no, I mean, I get up, I hang out with my kids. We're doing a project right now on like building rockets. We're having a lot of fun. But it bothered them that I would just be enjoying my life. Like, that's not how it's supposed to work. In America, it's 50 out of the 52 weeks, you're supposed to be working that whole time. And to have somebody not doing that, is a kind of violation of social order or something like that. Yeah.
Well, I suppose, especially the more uncertain people feel, the more a sense of work gives them a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
This is one of the things. The other thing I'd say is, the sense of productivity. Obviously, productivity is incredibly important in Western culture. But also linear time you said gives us the idea that our time here is limited.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like a lot of people have the impression that with that limited time, they have to be as like a productive and like important member to society as they could. Otherwise, they're like
Absolutely.
being a burden on society or being a leecher or like just an empty feeder or some
Right.
stuff.
Yeah, no wonder that the arts and music and academics, I'd say academics for its own sake especially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not academics so that you can go make money or so that you can get a career, but just academic learning for its own sake are really not looked on very highly in our societies because those aren't seen as something that produces something that can be bought and sold and
And we don't have,
da-da-da-da-da-da.
and we have a limited amount of time on this work.
Exactly,
That's the
exactly.
idea.
You know, and it's interesting just even the difference between Europeans and America. There's definitely a different view of time, both like a day and a week, but also over what the lifespan looks like. And I'd say my European friends tend to see life as something to enjoy life and work as kind of a means to an end. While I'd say in America, work kind of is your life. I mean, if you're working 50 out of 52 weeks for 45 years, I mean, you can't say that life is anything but primarily just working.
Yeah,
That's what your life is for, is to work.
The distance probably plays a part in it because you kind of here you exit work, your apartment is probably walking distance or like public
Oh, yeah,
transportation
yeah.
distance. So
I have
there's
a 4-minute walk to work. It's rough.
it is wonderful. The longest commute I've ever had to school was 20 minutes on a bus.
Yeah.
So that probably also plays a part in it because the working day here is shorter because you don't have to commute
Right.
either.
It is true.
So even if
Yeah.
Europeans also perceive time as this like finite linear thing, there's probably less stress on it. Mostly because they feel like everything is close and they're like wasting. So I
Right.
say less of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually curious. How do you think Bulgarians perceive time, from your experience at least?
Yeah, I mean, it seems less shocking now because I'm used to it, right? But when I first came here, I just saw people out everywhere. Even just walking here tonight, and it's dark and it's pretty cold outside right now. But I probably saw 300 people on my walk. And they were with each other. They were sitting together. They had their little kids in their strollers. They were chatting. They're sitting in cafes and talking. In America, I don't know how to describe to you how this is how it works. But you leave work, you walk out to the parking lot, and you get in your car, and then you drive home, and you open your garage with your little garage door opener button, and then you drive in, and then you push that button, and it closes it, and that's your life. Like there's nobody around. So I remember when I first came here, I was like, is there some big festival happening or something? I began to realize, oh no, just everybody's just out. Like everybody's out, they're out with each other, out chatting, out just sitting in the, because the main building's on that main square in the town.
Yes.
There's just people sitting around there all the time. They're not doing anything. They're just sitting there and enjoying it and being with each other. And the little kids are riding their bicycles and, all that kind of stuff. So really, really different.
So it's like a bit of like this mixture between still perceiving time as linear, but feeling like there's probably more of it, being more relaxed about it.
Yeah, and that the purpose of time is a little bit different.
Probably. I think this also ties into a less positive thing about Bulgaria, which is there's a sense of hopelessness and apathy in a lot of Bulgarians because of complicated historical reasons.
Yeah.
So work can't give you purpose because nobody trusts work. Nobody trusts institutions. Nobody trusts anything, honestly.
Right.
There is an internal sense that you can only trust your family and nothing else. So
Exactly.
there's like a bit of a, obviously with the modernization, more like of the American mindset is coming in, especially because we have very low taxes. So we have a lot of digital nomads. But there is a mistrust towards institutions, towards work, towards working. It's kind of like the sense of why does it matter? It's hopeless.
Right.
Which in a lot of senses is a big negative in our culture because it leads to it's less noticeable in Volgograd. Volgograd is actually a surprisingly, for me at least personally, because this is my first time living here, significantly more laid back and chill.
It is.
Whereas
Really
I
is.
grew up and lived in Sofia, and I lived for a few years in Istanbul. So absolutely.
Very different. Blagovgrad's kind of an unusual place. There's a kind of relaxedness, but family orientation that
Yes,
I
because
was really surprised by
there's a
that.
lot of young people in Volgograd
Yeah.
compared to other kind of province in big scare quotes,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
but like non-capital towns.
Mhm.
In Sofia, you can really feel the kind of apathy. Not even apathy; it's like more violent than that. It's kind of an attitude against everything, like an attitude of like hopelessness and cynicism.
Yeah, yeah. Cynicism's a good word.
Historically speaking. So like it comes with like its benefits and its drawbacks, and it's interesting to see how like that perception of time changes.
Yeah, for sure.
There's also time and history, which is a whole another topic. Time and history, how different countries and different cultures view history.
Well, I'll give you just a funny little experience of mine on that. You grow up in America and you go to something and they're like, this is 200 years old. And you're like, whoa. I remember I was at some place in the eastern side of the U.S. and it was like graffiti or something that students had put into these bricks or something. And I was like touching them going, whoa, that's like 200 years old. Okay, then fast forward some years, I live in Egypt, and you're in Egypt, you have like 5,000-year-old tombs with color still on the walls. You have papyri that like have names, and some of them are even like accounting. So like how many people and with the food they had to feed all the workers to work on this project. And so you have names from thousands and thousands of years ago, and you start to go, I see. So I remember how much that changed my understanding of what 10 years meant or what 100 years meant, where in America that seems like a really long time, and in Egypt 200 or 300 years is just nothing.
It feels like nothing. So you feel like in America time was more scarce because you didn't see like anything that's like old, that's like
exactly
kind of like a proof of time.
That's right. Exactly. You're right.
You don't see a proof of time, so it feels like it's significantly shorter. In countries like Egypt or India, who is also incredibly old, or maybe countries like China, you just live alongside like 3,000-year-old artifacts.
Exactly. Yeah, such a different sense of what the world is like. And Americans, I think, because they're like a childhood country, right? They're still so young. They also have some of those childhood things for good and bad. A kind of optimism. I think we're losing a little bit of that, which is sad. But a kind of optimism about the world and a belief that we can do something and things will change.
There's still hope for
And
that.
and I admire that sometimes about Americans, but it also causes us trouble. We also think, oh, we've got this problem in Syria. Let's just drop a bunch of bombs on it and then we'll all get better. We don't have this historical sense that
move fast and break things. Everything's gonna be okay.
That's right.
Good and bad, obviously. There's hope that globalization will make us kind of even that out across cultures. Because here you have the opposite problem. Everything feels like it has been here since forever. Nothing can change. Nothing will change.
Yeah, and
it's too old. It's too ingrained. It's too cultural. It's too into us. There's nothing you can do about it. So what's the point even?
That's right.
It does stop us from like the move fast and break things mindset, but it also stops us from implementing very needed changes. So there's one more difference about time. There is still hope for the U.S.
Yes.
At least I have hope for the U.S. We shall see in the coming years, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's kind of a bit outside of the purview of here.
Totally.
I have a question here that's still connected to university. What we talk about, how does sleep affect the perception of time? Cultural ideas of the expected schedule we talked about affecting the perception of time. About university life and academia. When everybody is awake at 3 a.m. So what's the difference even?
Exactly.
I'm going to miss this, actually, when I graduate.
Absolutely.
I'm really going to miss this.
Yeah, I had a hard time when I went from being a student to then going to work every day be there from 8 to 5 and that kind of stuff, and 50 weeks out of the year. So in the States, you get usually like 2 weeks off somehow during the year. I was horrified.
It is a horrifying.
I just was like, because I was imagining what am I going to do for the next 40 years of my life, right? I was like, let's just imagine. I was a little older than that, probably. I'm 25 years old. I'm going to retire at 65. I've got 40 years of this, and what's this? I just, to me, that was so shocking. And so I remember I was working for this professor, and one day I went to go see him in the morning, wasn't around, and maybe it was just early afternoon I saw him, and I said, "Oh, I came by earlier this morning. You weren't here. Are you not feeling well?" He said, "No, just didn't come in yet." I was all, "You can just decide to when to come into work." And I was all, okay, now I know where I'm going with my career. Like, there's a lot to be done, and everybody loves to complain about how we're overworked and da-da-da-da-da. So I certainly put in my hours in a week, but I love that that's my choice, that I have flexibility and choice in when those hours are and how I arrange my life every day. So my life is a little more mine.
It does feel like occasionally for some jobs, having to be there is a bit more out of tradition than any reason to be there.
It's kind of like having meetings because you meet, right? We have meetings on every Thursday at such and such a time. It often just becomes carries its own momentum, when really maybe we should just be able to say, "Oh, we don't really have anything important to talk about except this one thing. Let's do that in 5 minutes. Then, I don't know, let's go sit out and enjoy the sunshine." I don't know.
Very enjoy the sunshine type of moment.
Yes.
It is a very kind of a privileged way to look at life, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think in the West that is privileged, but in a lot of cultures that's how it is for most people. The clock doesn't control your life every day. I was in Vietnam, and I was speaking to this guy who ran a business, and we were talking about the challenge he had of consistency of workers. He said, people often will come in from their villages, they'll come to the city, they'll work in the factory, but then when they have enough money and they go back home for a holiday or something, they just stay in their village for a while. And then they come back when they need money again. And I was like, that's really interesting to think of work as a thing you do to get the thing you need. But then once you get your thing you need, you stop working for a while. And I'm sure they're doing their own work in their own villages, but you know what I mean? Like, go to the city and get a job kind of work. He said, so then who is working in his factory is constantly sort of shifting and moving all the time. So there's a lot of people who live a life where work is a means to an end, not an end in itself, and who have a lot more flexibility than we do in our societies. I don't know where we got this idea that the normal thing in life is just to go to work for 40 hours a week.
The Industrial Revolution.
Do we need all that? Do we need all the stuff that comes from it? Americans have an enormous Americans are way wealthier than Europeans, and they have a lot more stuff, but what's it worth in the long run?
I suppose the lack of... I have been to America maybe once for 2 weeks, and admittedly it was a very limited exposure to America because I was in a competition, so...
Oh, I see.
It was limited. They didn't let us just walk around at 16 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a very limited amount of time in the US, but what I did notice is you're just limited to what's immediately around you, so I feel like that's the thing that brings us a sense. We didn't have a car, obviously. My teachers didn't think to rent one. And they were like, we should have just rented the bus.
Of course.
But even walking, we got stopped by police walking to the Walmart.
Right. What are you doing walking? It's so strange, right?
Because we're just three teenage girls on the side of the road without a sidewalk.
Exactly.
And the cops just looking at us, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Are you okay? And we're like, we have to go to the Walmart. And they're like, are you European? We're like, yes.
That's right, exactly. Like, what are you doing walking to something? That seems so strange, exactly.
I get the sense that the lack of, just distance dictates the perception of time in large part as well. It is very easy to feel like you have a limited amount of time when you can just walk there.
It's true.
And think nothing of it.
It's true.
So, what would you say is an ideal perception of time? Does something like that even exist? Can we even apply that?
I don't think it probably is, in that you just don't usually get to decide what your culture's sense of time is. But I think if you know different kinds of time, you can be both more flexible, but you can also decide which parts of your life are clock time and which ones aren't. So, for example, I would always encourage everybody to have some days during a year that are non-time days where you do not use a clock, you don't use a calendar, and you get up when you're not tired anymore, or you eat when you're hungry, you go to sleep when you're tired, and you just don't use a clock, because it's almost like we all need a little bit of a break from our clocks and calendars periodically, because it reminds you of what actually matters. I mean, even phones have changed our concept of time a ton, and it often means that we spend a lot less downtime with each other.
Is that mine? Whose is this? Is that mine?
It's probably some alarm telling us that we shouldn't be doing something we're doing right now, right?
Oh wait, no, that's mine. That's mine. It's linked to trolley forwards.
Oh, that's so funny.
I forgot to turn it on. Yeah, I have 7,000 alarms. This feels very topical.
Yeah, there we go. Exactly.
Look, it's hard to adjust from your parents not having any scheduling whatsoever to going
to having a schedule. Yeah,
yes,
that's really true.
because even in high school, I didn't exactly have a schedule. Our high school was very. It was anarchy in a bad sense of the word, but that did lead to the fact that I could just pick and choose what I do when I do it. So this is literally the first time in my life ever that I have to look at the clock
to determine what you're going to do. Yeah,
yes,
interesting, isn't it?
The first time in my life I have to actually keep track of the clock.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 70,000 alarms on my phone. It feels incredibly topical.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing, is if when we need to be in clock time, if we can be in it and learn how to do that, because there is some efficiency that can come from that, but the efficiency should be for a purpose, not just always get more, but the efficiency should be if I can get this done between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m., then I should leave work and go enjoy my life. So, if you can use the goods of each different view of time to have a better life, I think that's great. But if you're only stuck with one, you're going to lose out on the benefits that the other view of time has to offer.
Mm-hmm. Talking about enjoying your life, I think this is kind of the end of the episode, considering my alarm started to ring.
That's right.
It's time for us to go enjoy life as well. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Professor,
thank
for being with us on this topic. It was an incredibly interesting theme.
pleasure.
We don't really have enough time to cover it in its entirety. It's an incredibly complex topic. But I feel like what we covered was meaningful in its own right.
Good.
Again, thank you for being with us, and good night to you and to everybody
pleasure.
listening.
Good night.
Goodbye.